see so many of you here today. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, BETT, for inviting Susie and I. I've been teaching now for 18 years, and in that time there's been a lot of excitement and a lot of change and a lot of challenge. And the one thing that has kept me grounded has been my ethos. What is it that I believe children in my class should receive? Well, I want the children in my class to be happy. I want the children in my class to be seekers of knowledge, to feel that they're always reaching their fullest potential, and to feel that they're part of something really special. And I'm going to tell you about the powerful learning method that encompasses all of that, and that is, of course, SOUL. SOUL is the brainchild of Professor Sugata Mitra, and it stands for Self-Organised Learning Environment. So how does the SOUL work? Well, basically you start with the most amazing question. A question usually that you as the teacher or the educator, you don't know the answer to, and the children definitely don't know the answer to. So it might be, how does water travel through all the spheres of the earth? Why do we all have different shaped noses? Or it might be, why is some of the planet covered in rainforest, desert and ice? And you set this amazing question off to the children. And from that point onwards, learning gets literally turned on its head. Because from that point onwards, you as an educator, as a teacher, take a step back. And then the children start to self-organise, find out the answer on the internet. But the difference is that I don't get involved at all. The children literally form their own groups. They can decide how big or how small the groups are. And another sort of non-rule of SOUL is that they can move around the groups as often as they like. Another key thing about SOUL is that the children are able to share information. So they can find something out. This group over here might find something amazing out, and then they go and tell it to another group. That is a big jump for children, because children tend to want to really own the information. But the key thing about the SOUL is it's not a competition. It's about finding the answer together, and the internet is the owner of the knowledge. So you set the children off, you've got this amazing question, and the children are all learning together. In a way, a SOUL is very different to a normal lesson. Usually, when I'm teaching a normal lesson, because I do teach normal lessons in the week, SOUL is perhaps one session that I teach in a week. In a normal lesson, I'm sort of pulling back at like a bow, if you imagine it, and I'm letting off an arrow, and I'm constantly following that arrow. I'm waiting to see where it gets to that target, and I want it to reach that target, and I want all the children to get there. We all know how we do that. We put support in, we put challenge in. But with a SOUL, when I pull back the bow and let go of the arrow, I have no idea where it's going to go. I don't know what direction the children are going to take the learning. I don't know where they're going to go. I don't know which websites they're going to go on, because I have no control over it. And that is hard for some teachers to first of all understand that they're not the ones in control, that you have to stand back. So what is the role of the teacher? So really the role of the teacher is to stand back in awe and watch your class, because they will amaze you. You have to trust them, because they really want to learn together. What you have to do really is go around the groups and stand there and admire what they're doing. We all know children, when you say that is amazing, how did you discover that? They literally grow a few centimetres with pride, don't they? So that encouragement really keeps them going. And actually for me, it's amazing for me to stand back and watch my class as they're all moving around and self-organising. And we see this a lot in nature, don't we? We see birds flocking and migrating. How do they get there? We don't know. We see ants carrying food to the nest. Who's leading it? Who's in control of it? We don't know, but they're self-organising, and at the end they get there. And this is what happens exactly with the SOUL. Everybody together is learning together and coming together in groups, moving groups, sharing ideas, and then we get this amazing learning at the end. Okay, so what else have I noticed? So if you were all in my class now and you were doing a song, I wouldn't be able to tell which children have special needs. I wouldn't be able to tell which children perhaps are higher ability children. I wouldn't be able to tell if there are any behaviour issues, because everybody is very accepting in soul. It does take a couple of souls to get it going and for children to get used to it, because you might find that when you do a soul, if you hopefully, fingers crossed, try to do one, that some children might take a little step back and suss it out for a while. They might not want to join in. And sometimes you find the children who seem to be not taking an active role are actually the ones that are getting the most from it. They're the ones that are picking up little nuggets of information. And last week I noticed that one girl was going around, she'd made herself out of a whiteboard and a bit of paper, and she was going around group to group and taking a little nugget of information from each group and dropping it off into each group and telling them what she was finding out. And what resulted in that is that she was able to constantly keep the soul moving and the learning moving within the room, which was amazing. I've also noticed that when I'm watching my class, the way they are talking to each other has changed. I was doing a simple question, why do we have night and day? And I saw the children literally making the spheres of the earth, and they were moving children around each other. They were living the learning. The one about, why do we all have different shaped noses? I saw them all looking at each other's noses and prodding each other's nostrils, and then they discovered that actually, apparently one side of your nose has more bogies than the other. Who knew? And they were actually looking at that, which is a bit too much information for us all. And so that the way they are talking to each other has changed. Also, the language has changed. They no longer say to me, can you tell me? They say, can we find out? And let's soul it is actually a really common sentence in my classroom. We might be doing a lesson and they might not understand it, and they'll say, let's stop the lesson and let's soul it, Mrs. Leonard, and let's find out the answer together. And that is really powerful as a teacher, because technology, as you can see today, it's all changing, it's exciting, but we don't know what technology the children are going to be using in the future. We don't know what their jobs are going to be in the future. But for me as an educator, I feel that I've got to start preparing them for that. And the children say to me that you're not always going to be there, so you're giving me a way to learn. You're telling me a way to learn which I can use, which I think is amazing. Because there's so many life skills that can be taught within a song. So we've had this amazing question. Everyone's in groups, moving around. The classroom becomes like this awesome hive with knowledge going round and children buzzing around. It's amazing to see. And then we come together. And that is when my role steps back in again. Because I've stepped in for the question, I've stepped out for the song, now I'm stepping back in again. And we all sit together, and the children then literally blow my mind with what they tell me. It is incredible. So, for example, I was doing a question a couple of weeks ago. It was a geography lesson, and I wanted to get across to them that if we keep building on green areas, there's going to be more flooding. Okay, so simple. So I asked the question, how are we changing our environments for the better or for the worse? And off they went. In fact, some soul questions, I find they slightly start to levitate. They're so excited, they're desperate to go and find out the answer. So off they went. Then we came back for our discussion, and the hands came up, and each group then reports back. Hands went up, and one boy said to me, yeah, if we keep building on green areas and areas by the river, it's going to keep flooding. And so within about the first sentence, my learning objective was like smashed, done, brilliant, tick, there it's done. And then I get the breadth and the depth of the learning, which is amazing. They started to talk about how if I decide to not live there, if I don't want to live on the area that's been built, and I move somewhere else, aren't I polluting that area? Or which they wanted to talk about mental health. which is best for you? Is it okay to live in a high-rise flat, or is someone happy there, or is someone unhappy in the countryside? They wanted to talk about graffiti. What was that a sign of? Was it a sign of happiness, unhappiness, or expression? They wanted to talk about how the governments are saying in these reports they're doing something, but are they? They wanted to talk about the colour of the countryside. They said, 100 years ago it was really green, now it's really grey, and what's it going to look like in another 100 years? So you can see, for me as a teacher, that learning objective is done, and I get to do the most amazing things with all these things that the children are telling me. The best sentence I got was, one boy said to me, "So who's in control, Mrs. Leonard, Mother Nature or us?" From an 8-year-old. So that was amazing, and I then get to take all these little nuggets of knowledge and really go major places with them. I can talk about Mother Nature with them, I can do poetry with them, I can go into art with graffiti, I can talk about mental health in my PSHE. So I can really help them live the learning. So it's like a real depth of learning, which is amazing for me. I've also noticed that the children have got really good at adding to each other's ideas. So somebody will say something, and now my class is saying, "That's really amazing. We also discovered this, and I'm not sure that that's right." So what we did is we checked it out with 2 other websites, because we're not sure that Google's right. Sorry, Google, if they're over. We're not sure who's running Google. And so they're starting to question everything that they're discovering, which is exactly what I want as an educator. I don't want them to believe everything that I'm saying. I want them to keep checking and looking and researching and thinking for themselves. I want to help create these thinkers for the future, and Soul does that so brilliantly. I also love that they're able to respectfully challenge each other and respectfully add to somebody else's opinion and say to each other, "Do you know what, I want to find out more about that." And a couple of weeks ago they started name checking each other, which was an amazing step, because one boy found something out and I was literally so excited. Like, "It's amazing, how did you discover that? That was so fantastic." He said, "Oh, it wasn't me, it was Isabel." And I thought, that's incredible for a child. Adults find that really hard. For him to say, "It wasn't me that found it, it was her, she found it out, and I was really proud of her." So can you see how Soul is not only helping the children to learn together, but it's helping to build these amazing relationships with each other, which is fantastic for me. Now, I know also as a teacher, I should say, that I have the pressure of the national curriculum, which we all do. We have this huge, great big, really amazing document that we have to tick these objectives and make sure that we're doing. And one really good way for you to do it, if you're interested in trying to have a go at doing a Soul, is to take one learning objective and just flip it into a question. So you might take, why do we need rocks? And you might flip it into, why doesn't the ocean sink into the bed of the sea? Or you might be looking at reading and you might say, what's more important, reading or comprehending? But also, the one thing that really amazes me is that I get to have these social Souls with the children, where I get to really discuss with them and almost have like those kitchen table discussions with them. Questions like, what makes a good friend? That is a really amazing Soul to do. We had an autistic child come to the school, and I really wanted to help that person feel really empowered. So the Soul question was, why is MI5 employing more autistic and dyslexic people? That was incredible for them to discover. So Soul is just so many things for me as a teacher. It's enlightened my classroom, it's made my classroom this buzzing zone of ideas and discovery, and that's why I came into teaching, to make the children constantly want to question, to constantly want to discover. And they're even doing Souls at home. They're bringing in more and more things that they're researching. So it's just, they're living it, which is just incredible for me. And I don't want you to just take my word for it. The children have also recorded a little thing for you which tells you why they love Soul so much. So I'll play you that, and if anybody has any questions, you can ask me some questions at the end. Is that okay? Okay. So I'm going to bear with. So.
I like Soul because we direct the learning. Soul gives colour to my learning. It makes learning inside. You're not always going to be there, so you're giving me a way to learn. When I do Soul, I feel like my learning can be taken to the next level.
Soul gives us loads more freedom.
In Soul, you learn things that even teachers don't know.
You feel more free.
I like Soul because you can find out things you never knew before. Soul gives me a taste of what schools might be like in the future.
Bye!
So I don't know if you heard all that they were saying, that Soul gives colour to my learning. Soul gives me a taste of what learning is going to be like in the future. Soul tells me what schools might be like in the future. You're not always going to be there, so you're giving me a way to discover by myself. That's amazing for me. That's like tick, job done. The children are happy. Goes right back to my ethos. They're seekers of knowledge. They're thinkers of the future. They're creators of the future, and I could not be more proud of them. So thank you.
How early?
Has anyone got any questions? Yeah.
How early can you start this age groups?
Okay, so how early? So I think really the children have to be able to read what they're finding on the internet, because they'll be going into Google. And by the way, when you go into Google, you'll find that it'll come up with loads of websites, obviously. So, you know, my 8 and 9-year-olds could be on Goldman Sachs and BBC and Telegraph. They do need to be able to read, but also with Soul, they can watch the videos or they can look at the images, so they can learn from that. But I think it tends to work better with sort of juniors, like Key Stage 2, 7 and up. Okay?
That was fantastic. Thank you for
That's
that.
okay. Thank you.
Do you do Soul as a period or as a block of time during your school day, or do you implement that as one of the programs in your school?
So normally I teach my usual week. I have my literacy, my numeracy, my science, every subject that we all have to teach. But for 1 hour a week, our classroom becomes a Soul classroom. So that's how we learn, you know, how they learn for that hour. And teachers have said to me, you know, I don't know how I would make it work in my room. One suggestion that I've had is that for that 6-week term, you take a different subject for each week. So you might do a science Soul 1 week, a geography Soul the next, an English Soul, a maths Soul. I actually haven't found a subject that you can't do a Soul with. And so you're touching all those curricular bases, but you'll find that the more Souls you do, the more you'll see the skills they're gathering in the Soul in every subject. Because the children in my class have no problem about sharing, working as groups. There's all that creative, collaborative thinking. It's all come together in that. Okay. Hi. Sorry.
It sounds to me as though 2 hours would be better than 1 per week, and maybe 3 would be better than 2. And
Yes.
What should the balance be? 1 surely must be too little.
Well, you kind of want to make a Soul like a special learning time. I think that some weeks I might do 2 or 3 Souls because my class is really used to it, and other weeks I might do 1. I always try to do 1 a week, but I wonder if I kept doing loads and loads all the time, I don't know if it would lose that specialness to it. But what I do love is the fact that the children are sort of developing for themselves what, you know, Siddhartha Mitra is called like a curriculum of questions, where they're constantly wanting to question and find out and discover. But I know what you mean. The more you do, the more you want to do. Totally. Yeah.
I have a question.
Hi.
What are the resources that they use during the Soul classroom?
Okay, so
Other than asking questions and adding on to what somebody is, some other student has said.
what physical resources?
Right.
Okay, so if I go back to, I'm just going to go back a couple of slides there. So that was, all I do is I have an iPad, paper, and then as Susie and I say, we give us the power of the pencil case. They are allowed all their felt tips and their Sharpies and everything, and they love it. They create this like fan of felt tips. And that's literally it. It's internet connection, it's 4 or 5 computers, it's pieces of paper, and they just write out the question. And these are lots of children's different ideas all written together on one sheet of paper. It's really simple. Nothing expensive. You know, Sagata would say that it'd be best to have like a large screen that they can gather round. But for us, it works just as well with an iPad. You know, don't. It's simple. They make it work. Children have this great way of making things work.
Is there any possibility of assessment or evaluation?
Sorry,
Any assessment or evaluation?
Oh. Estimate on the.
At the end of the lesson, can
Yeah.
you do some evaluation for the students?
Yeah,
How do you
so we do. You could do some evaluation at the end of your lesson. There's like, for example, one lesson I did. Who are the Vikings? Really simple question. They wrote down before the soul everything they knew, and at the end of the soul they added what they'd found out in a different colour. Or after you've done a soul, you can then decide to take the learn. As I said, it's like a springboard for more things. So they might present it in a report format. They might do drama. So there's lots of different ways. If you want to have something like to measure and to look at and something written down, it is possible as well. But I have said to the children that some people doubt that that you're not taking enough away, that they want proof. And one boy said to me, why would we spend an hour doing something that doesn't work, and it's all in here anyway? So
As a teacher, we would like to know if everybody got it.
yes, you do. But you do like to know if everybody's got it. But it's the same as any lesson. Some lessons I do that are not soul, not everybody's going to get it. And the same with the soul. Some people will get it. It's very rare that people don't. But if you wanted to measure it, I guess the only way would be through questioning at the end, lots more on an individual basis, which is, yeah. Okay.
Is it always the teacher who presents the question? Or, okay, so the students can also create their own questions if you show them a picture or
Yes,
something?
I mean you could have a stimulus that you could say, oh, I'll tell you something I have done before. I gave them a really hard question, and I said to them, in order to solve this question, what soul questions would you think of? And that was amazing.
And is it then okay if the different groups of pupils have different questions?
No,
Okay.
no, that you have to have one question for everybody to solve together.
And
that-
why?
Pardon?
Why? Why is
Why-
this? Why can't we
Um,
have different?
Because it would become confusing, because if I had my question and that group had another question, that group had another question, I think it would become really confusing for children to move around, because they wouldn't be able to add necessarily to a group unless,
Differentiated learning.
yeah.
Then supposing there are different levels of learning.
Yeah, who are taking different things from one question. I think you'll be amazed if you just take one question, how many different levels will come from it. To keep it simple. Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, great.
Thanks for sharing. It's really, really inspiring.
Oh, good.
What kind of challenges do you think? So if someone's never done this before and
Yeah.
they want to implement it in their class,
Yeah.
what kind of challenges do you think they might face, and what advice would you give?
Okay, I think some of the challenges are actually, as teachers, we want to always dive in and get involved. And that is really hard, because you want to help and encourage and say, why don't you just try that website? Or maybe you should type that in. So that is a challenge for a teacher, because for that hour you don't do that. You literally step back. I think that's the main challenge. And I think also you might see some children that you think aren't getting involved, or who seem to be misbehaving a bit. Like we had one child that constantly just walked around, but by the third soul he'd stopped doing it. It's kind of like there becomes like this buzz that they want to be part of it. They don't want to be messing around. They know it's something special, and they don't want to waste their time. But I think the biggest thing is you having to step back and not get involved. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you.